Welcome to On Texas Football. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by CJ Vogel and Rod Babers. This is the Saturday conversation brought to you by our friends over at MyBookie. Make sure you're in the game with MyBookie. Bet any matchups, hundreds of college player props, and more at mybookie.ag. Hey, guys, I've got to say this. Texas off this week, right? So the Longhorns got a week off, but that doesn't mean college football is off. We got some thoughts that we want to go over. A really, really good slate in the SEC, I think, overall. Every single one of Texas's future opponents plays this weekend, and I think we'll get tested a little bit this weekend as well. So that could be some meaningful impact there for the Longhorns. Before we get going on the SEC slate, I do want to say the game of the week nationally is clearly Ohio State, Penn State. That starts at 11 o'clock this morning over on Fox. Penn State guys, are they legit or are they just fakers? Once again, I guess. I don't know what better word to put it. Or is Ryan Day the one that's faking it again, and he's the guy that was born on third base? What are y'all thoughts about the Ohio State, Penn State?
It's an interesting game, right? You know, it's not one that I expected to be very close coming into the year. Of course, Ohio State, in my eyes, is the most talented roster in college football coming into the year. They haven't played that way. You know, that running game that you expected to be kind of the bread and butter of that offense hasn't been up to par, right? You know, and that's surprising. Quinshon Judkins, Travion Henderson, that's the best 1-2 running back duo in the entire country, and it's not shown up. And that forces Will Howard to do more than he's expected or supposed to do, which we've followed Will Howard for a while. Is that really the recipe that you want for him to be, you know, having to undergo in big games? Probably not. So if Penn State, who historically and over the last 10 years or so has had very, very good front sevens, if they're able to force Ohio State to throw the football, I think it plays into their favor. Still, I like the Buckeyes in that game. Can't trust Coach Franklin just yet.
Boom. No, I'm a James Franklin fan. I'll just say that just straight up. But I'll admit I don't trust him in big games. I don't. He's just not a big game. He's a good coach, but he's not necessarily a big game coach. Now that may change this year because he's got the new offensive coordinator, Cole Tanicki from Kansas. So maybe that changes. There are some concerns about whether their starting quarterback is going to play because he's dealing with an injury. So I think it's a game time decision. That could change the complexion of this game. I'll give you a stat, though. Last 6 home games where Penn State has been an underdog. So last 6 games as a home underdog, 0-6.
Ooh.
0-6. Once again, kind of going back to the big game thing we're talking about. The only concern for Ohio State, I agree, I'm picking Ohio State, but they got some offensive line issues. Their starting tackle went down. One of their starting tackles, Josh Simmons, he suffered a season-ending injury, so he was out. And then his replacement, Zen Michalski, he went down in their last game. He was carted off on their win versus Nebraska. He was carted off the field. So they moved, I believe, their left guard, Donovan Jackson, out to left tackle. They got some offensive line issues. If they're forced to throw the ball too much, Penn State can rush the passer a little bit. They got some dogs on the line. That's something to watch. I'll still take Ohio State, but keep those factors in mind, especially if Penn State's starting quarterback doesn't play. That could be Drew Allar, his name. That could be a huge issue.
You mentioned Cole Tanicki, the offense coordinator for Penn State. Just look at what's happened to Kansas this year without him.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I do think that is a piece of the puzzle here. He's getting the ball to the running backs at Penn State pretty successfully, and that is the strength of their offense, in my opinion, no doubt, even with Drew Allar. I tell you what, though, I can't get over 2 weeks ago, Indiana absolutely demolished Nebraska in Bloomington. Last week, Ohio State and Nebraska went to the final quarter. Ohio State won 21-17. So either Indiana's legit or Ohio State is still trying to figure out who they are. I'm going to go Penn State here. And I do not pick James Franklin in big games. To Rod's point, I just don't. So I think I'm going to go Penn State though, because at least I think their offensive coordinator is going to have a little bit more to them. in this big game and may be able to pull something out. All right, let's go to the SEC. Rod, you went with Ohio State, and CJ, you went Ohio State, both you guys?
Yep.
Chalk me up on Penn State on that one. Let's go to the SEC. The SEC slate is brought to you by our friends over at MyBookie. With all the excitement of this season, make sure you're in the game with MyBookie. Bet any matchup, hundreds of college player props, and take advantage of weekly risk-free bets. The best part is you can do it all, anytime, anywhere, straight from your phone. Visit mybookie.ag. Use promo code ONTexas to get started. It's MyBookie's 10th year anniversary, and they're rolling out the red carpet for bettors. Bet big and bet confidently with risk-free Thursdays. If your boosted bet doesn't hit, you get your money back. Weekly no sweat win-win bets all season long. And sign up now using code ONTexas to cash in on a double deposit bonus. It's a no-brainer. Double the cash in your account before you even place your very first bet. But do not wait on it because it's only available for a limited time. And for those of you guys who've been playing with MyBookie for some time, they've got something for you too. A brand new loyalty rewards program in MyBookie Plus. It's simple. The more you play, the more you earn. And as you progress through the tiers, unlock exclusive promotions, epic giveaways, and cash back in your account. All right. It is a full slate in the SEC, CJ and Rod. No doubt about it. I'm looking at it right now. First game out of the gate is Ole Miss, Arkansas. Now, Texas plays Arkansas in 3 weeks. Arkansas favored by 8. Ole Miss goes on the road and is favored by 8 at Arkansas. Is that just me, or does that seem like a lot of points in this game when I think Arkansas is actually coming off a more impressive win, really demolishing Mississippi State, whereas Ole Miss basically just held serve against Oklahoma on Saturday? What are y'all's thoughts on this one?
I like Ole Miss, but I will admit Ole Miss offense is not as potent as it was prior to them. They got around week 5. Same thing with Texas, actually. Around the time they got a little deeper into SEC play, their offense didn't look as prolific as it did. But the Ole Miss front 7 is legit. Ole Miss's D-line, their linebackers are legit. One of the best front 7s in the country. That's what you need going up against Arkansas because Taylor Green can run the rock. He's a formidable threat. He's a catalyst on that offense. They're going to need spies on him. They're going to need ways to stop the run game. The good news for Ole Miss is I'm not sure if Jaquindon Jackson is going to play. And as Longhorn fans know, for his time there as as a quarterback and then transferring to Utah and then now to Arkansas, he's actually one of the better running backs in the country this season. He's been really, really productive. He didn't play last game. Not sure he's going to play this game. If he doesn't play, that's a huge blow to Arkansas. I'll take Ole Miss. I don't know about a big number, but I'll take Ole Miss.
What about you, CJ?
This game being at 11 a.m. hurts Arkansas, and that's kind of been the case again, right? And that's where I look at Texas going to Fayetteville, having a lot of confidence in the Longhorns, right? It's 11 a.m. game. If that game's under the lights, we know how hostile it can get. I feel like I've said that again, and it backfired a little bit for Arkansas against LSU when the Tigers were able to kind of pull away late in that game. But the big thing for me, when I look at Ole Miss, that's a soft football team. It just is. And it's soft in the trenches where they were expected to be really good, where they went out and added a lot of portal addition this offseason, and it's not paid off so far. They averaged 55 points per game in 4 games before SEC play. 55, that's great. That leads the country. They're averaging 24 in SEC play. That's 4 games in which they've lost 2 of those, right? Lost a game in Baton Rouge they should have won, leading by a touchdown with 30 seconds left. Then you lose to Kentucky, a team that really is looking like probably the bottom of the barrel in SEC play right now, and it starts with the trenches. The offensive line's gotten whooped. The defensive line gets pressure, but it's not consistent, and teams are able to run and throw the ball on them. Trenches have to stand up for them. I like the Pigs to cover 8, and I like the Pigs to win this game.
Geez, you just took the words out of my mouth. I'm going with Arkansas, not just to cover. I mean, not that I just think they're going to win. Taylor Green gives you a run-pass option that is particularly tough for stout up-front defenses, which is their – and Rod, you know this. You mentioned their defensive line and linebackers. That's actually – that I think they lean on that heavily and I actually think they have the antidote when a quarterback can run. We'll see if Taylor Green, though, and this is the big one, can finish the game because he has been injured a little bit this year. And if Ole Miss gets after him too much, could be an issue there. All right, next one I want to talk about is A&M, South Carolina. The Aggies, guys, this is a 6:30 primetime game on ABC. Aggies going to get a lot of publicity out of this one, but they're going to South Carolina. A&M favored by only 2.5. You would not suspect that, but South Carolina can be a surprisingly difficult place to play. They have their quarterback back. They've given teams problems. They gave LSU problems. They gave Alabama problems on the road. They beat up pretty easily on Oklahoma. What's y'all's take on this South Carolina Texas A&M game?
Tough place to play. I mean, it's going to be a really tough place to play for Texas A&M, and it's going to be a situation where A&M's coming off of a very emotional victory, one in which the entire country was watching. They made a statement. Are they able to get back up to that level of enthusiasm and really, just emotion for this game? And maybe, that's going to be Coach Elko's biggest task this weekend is making sure his guys care that much more. They're in the top 10 now, but they're playing a team that's unranked, but all to lose for. They have nothing to lose at South Carolina. Big thing here, Texas A&M's front is going to get pressure on Lenore Sellers in that passing game for South Carolina. The Gamecocks are 130th in the country in sacks allowed. Good luck if that's what you're bringing to the table against the front seven like we've seen at Texas A&M. I like the Aggies to win and win big, but that line's 2 for a reason, Bobby. I wouldn't be surprised if it comes down to the wire, obviously.
Yep, I agree with CJ on that one. It's I'm not sure that the South Carolina offensive line can hold up against the A&M defensive line. I think that's the biggest issue. I got a stat that add to one that CJ brought. South Carolina's offensive line, their pressure rate allowed 3rd worst in the Power 4. All right, so they allow a lot of pressure, and that is one of the strengths of the Aggies is their front 4 and their front 7. I'll say the Aggies are able to put consistent pressure on them. South Carolina's pass defense is pretty good, but when they have been exposed, it's been because of their rush defense. And with Marcel Reed, looks like the Aggies have added some juice to their run game. He looks like he's just really tough to defend when they're running that read option. I'll take the Aggies. Win big. I'm not sure. It might turn into an ugly game on the road. They definitely win, and I think they could win comfortably.
Guys, I'm gonna tell you, I think South Carolina's gonna win this game.
Ooh.
And look, y'all are right about all of those facts. Okay, here's one that you can't deny. South Carolina has a pair of edge rushers that I think can help corral Marcel Reed enough and force them to go a different route and win through the air. I don't know that A&M can do that against anyone. If you force them to throw, can they beat you? And I think that's a fair question. I just hope they don't have to find that out.
Yeah.
Marcel Reed threw all of 2 passes last week. Now, one of them was a bomb that hit, right? So I'm not denying that. I think he is a really, really talented player for them. I think Connor Wigman is now, persona non grata after that second half performance against LSU. But we'll see. We may see both of these guys if the offense isn't going one way or the other, and they do have it corralled. They have that zone read corralled. So I agree with y'all at some levels. The misfit or miscalculation for A&M's or this not even a fair match at South Carolina's offensive line versus the A&M defensive front. I agree with y'all. I remember this game 2 years ago. A&M went up there and South Carolina just beat the you-know-what out of them. I'm not sure if that'll happen again, but I do think it'll be ugly. And somehow we'll see if Shane Beamer pulls it up. All right, a couple other games to talk about. Texas's next opponent, Florida, plays Georgia in the world's largest cocktail party in Jacksonville, Florida. It's a neutral site game, somewhat like the Texas OU game in the Cotton Bowl. So this is over in Jacksonville at the Gator Bowl. 2:30 kick on ABC. Georgia, this line has gone down, by the way. It was 16.5, 17.5 early in the week. According to my bookie, it is now down to 15. So folks are pushing some money into the table on Florida. even though they've lost a couple of pieces to the puzzle. They lost their wide receiver. He's going to be out in this game. They've lost their starting cornerback for the rest of the year. Is Georgia – are people just scared about Georgia's inconsistency on offense, perhaps? Is that part of the puzzle here? What do you think, Rod?
I just think they're a proven commodity, right? I mean, it's just that you just trust in Kirby Smart and trust what Georgia has accomplished being the standard of college football. Longhorns learned that. I learned that the hard way too. That's just the reality of it. And I think there are certain – I talk about this in other sports too. When you develop a championship pedigree, when you've been there, a few years in a row, and you've kind of been at the top of the mountain and competing for championships year after year, you do develop, I think, an ability to flip the switch. So you don't always look great. Like think about the Golden State Warriors toward the end of their dynasty. Think about Kansas City right now. You don't always look great, but you have the ability to flip the switch when you need to. And then go out there and be clutch and win when you have to, because you know what it takes. You've been there so much. You're like, I know what the different level of play is. Right now, we're competing, but when I turn it on and flip the switch, I can't. I think Georgia has that ability now because they've been there so long. They can flip. They did it on Texas. They just flipped the switch on them. It was like, what? We haven't seen that Georgia team since last year, but they flipped the switch on them. So I think it could end up being closer than it should be against Georgia with Florida, because I think DJ Lagway can end up making some plays. But if Kirby Smart dials up some of those exotic pressure packages that he broke out against Quinn, that had Quinn in the blender, he can certainly do that against a young, inexperienced quarterback like Lagway. He does have the legs, so he can make something out of nothing and improvise and color outside the lines. But you can only do that so much against Kirby. As we know, put Arch in there. It's like, Arch, he got a 20-some yard run and shut down the next play. All right, you need a lot of solutions going up against a Kirby Smart defense, and Florida ain't got them. So
yeah, a boomer bust young quarterback against a Kirby Smart defense normally results in a lot more busts.
Yeah,
in a game like this where again, an emotional rivalry game, right? Let's not forget that it's at the neutral site. This should be one where there's the historical moments shown before the game in the locker room. They're hyped up. If Billy Napier could ever save his job, it would be against a win against Georgia, right? But do you have the horses in your stable for Florida to stay up with Georgia? I just say simply no. Can you protect DJ Lagway? Right now, I say no. And for DJ Lagway, can you protect the football? Again, young quarterbacks normally don't fare too well against the Georgia defense. I like Georgia big, and I still think this Georgia offense is just average. It just is average. It's not an overwhelming, high-flying Georgia offense that maybe we've seen in the past, but it's going to be enough to score on Florida, and they're going to be able to run the ball very well against the Gators. Fortunately for Texas, Florida should be pretty beat up coming to Austin.
That's true.
As a result of this game being played this week ahead of the Longhorns meeting with them next week.
Tell you what, we all thought Billy Napier would get fired this year. Not all of us. I can't speak for you guys, but a lot of people thought he would be. He wins this game, keeps it close, then goes on a little run late in the year. Let's see where he ends up, because I think he does have a little lightning in the bottle with DJ Lagway. I think he does have a little lightning in the bottle there. So we'll see what happens. Carson Beck, so up and down. I'll take Georgia, but to Rod's point, I think it's just inertia. It's not a specific reason. It's just because I think the car is going that way. I'm going to keep going with the car. You know what I mean? That's my feeling. All right, other games. Vanderbilt goes to Auburn. Texas has played Vanderbilt. Auburn actually favored by 7 in this contest.
Wow.
Listen to this one. Mississippi State hosts Massachusetts. That's 18-point favorite on my bookie. Maine, the Black Bears go to Oklahoma. That is off the board for a lot of people. And then Kentucky goes to Tennessee. Tennessee favored by 17 over the Wildcats. Just a really good overall slate, I think, for this year, or for this week in the SEC. Of course, Texas not playing. Outside of the SEC, guys, there are some interesting games. There's Oregon going to Michigan.
Yep.
Oregon favored by 15. Louisville goes to Clemson. Clemson favored by 10. Those are two of the top 10 teams in the country. Oregon, obviously, number 1 right now. Clemson at number 10, I believe. In the state of Texas, a couple of interesting games. Pitt, having a great season right now. Yep. SMU, 7 o'clock tonight. TCU goes to Baylor. Baylor trying to save Dave Aranda's job right now. The Bears are actually favored by 3 over TCU. And then Texas Tech, this is actually not in Texas, but the Red Raiders go up to Iowa State, where the Cyclones, undefeated this year, and favored this game. This was surprising to me, by 13.5. That game, that Tech-Iowa State game, feels like it's either going to be nip and tuck or Iowa State's going to win by 30. Which way are you guys going on the Iowa State-Texas Tech game? That's a typical Texas Tech score, by the way. They're either going to give you all kinds of hell or going to lose by 30. Which way is Joey McGuire going in Ames instead of Love? What do y'all think?
It shakes up to be a pretty nasty game for the Red Raiders, right? Matt Campbell's defense, normally pretty good. Texas Tech's defense, normally pretty bad. So it shakes up to go on the road in Ames, Iowa, and be a blowout. But, whispers are kind of getting louder in Lubbock. This is a game in which you're probably hoping to save a job or at least play and contend against a team that you hope to contend with if you're Texas Tech. This needs to be a statement if you're a Red Raider fan listening in.
Yeah, I got to believe with you. I agree with that, man. Joey McGuire's time, maybe the clock may be ticking up there.
I know. They're actually, I'm sure you guys have heard about it, the latest story about there may have been some compromised headset communications, and Texas Tech is the program that they are basically begging the Big 12 to initiate an investigation, essentially because they had 2 really bad losses to Baylor and the TCU in back-to-back games. They had one where they had a 2-touchdown lead in the third quarter, I believe, against TCU, and they came back 31-14 in the third quarter and win that game. And then, of course, they lost real bad to Baylor. So they're claiming conspiracy theories out there. Maybe somebody did hack the comms. Who knows? But I'm with you. It seems like time's starting to get tough out there in Lubbock. And, yeah, it ain't pretty. I'll take Iowa State all day, every day. Just say, at this point, a better program, period. I mean, sorry, Tech fans.
I'll tell you what. Another coach that may be persona non grata if they lose is the loser of TCU Baylor. I mean, Baylor's getting a better brand of ball right now.
Yeah.
Sonny Dykes had them in the national championship game 2 years ago. They ain't there now.
No.
Baylor favored by 3 by my bookie. What do y'all make of that?
Baylor surprised me against Tech, right? I mean, they blew them out, and I wasn't a big believer in Baylor. I didn't think that they'd be a team to really do much this season. TCU, I'm all the way off of. So, that's a team that I think is kind of like Oklahoma, just wandering aimlessly, no real direction right now. I like Baylor.
All right. TCU's quarterback, got to tell y'all this, leading the country in turnovers, TCU is right now.
Ain't good.
Offensive turnovers. Tough stuff. All right, that's going to do it for this Saturday's conversation. I hope you guys enjoy the weekend of football. We'll be back a little bit later today. We got some recruiting news and notes coming on Texas Football, so please check in with us. Also, check us out online at ontexasfootball.com. That'll do it for the Saturday conversation, brought to you by our friends over at mybookie.ag. Use code ONTEXAS for double your first deposit, 100% match up to $1,000. For CJ and Rod B, as well as our producer, Matt Hutchinson. You guys have a good Saturday, everybody. Hook 'em.